Welcome back to this new episode of the Computational Antitrust podcast. My name is Thibault Schrepel. I am a faculty affiliate at Stanford University Codex Center, an associate professor of law at the VU Amsterdam, and the creator of the Computational Antitrust project, which explores how legal informatics can benefit antitrust law. The project brings together over 75 competition agencies and about 50 academics on its advisory board. Every month or so, we publish an academic article on computational antitrust. You can find all of these publications in open access at computationalantitrust.com. Today's guest is Gustavo Augusto Freitas de Lima, president of Brazil Competition Agency. I'm also joined today by our new editor-in-chief, Alba Ribera Martinez, who will now regularly join me on the podcast. Alba, as you will hear, is a researcher and antitrust specialist working at the intersection between competition law, data, and digital markets. I am absolutely thrilled to have her join the project, also join me on the podcast, so please expect some fireworks.
Thank you so much, Thibault, for that presentation. And in today's conversation, Gustavo, Thibault, and we will explore how CADE has become one of the most advanced competition authorities in the world when it comes to integrating data science into enforcement. We also discuss the development of Schrepel, CADE's data-driven system designed to detect collusion in public procurement, and also we will explore what cases such as the Novo Rumo investigation reveal about the practical role of analytics in cartel detection. We also step back to discuss broader questions, such as how computational tools fit within Brazil's legal and judicial framework, how CADE collaborates with sector regulators and also other Latin American authorities, and what kinds of expertise competition agencies will need in the coming decade as markets become increasingly algorithmic and data-driven. I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
Well, Gustavo, thank you so very much for coming on the podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you with us for a couple of minutes. What we've done is that we've divided the conversation in three different parts. First, we want to talk about the vision of the agency and your vision as the head of the agency for the last couple of months and years. Then we want to talk about something that we know is very special within the agency and also looking at the big picture, something that you've done very well, and that's the Schrepel project. And after that, and this will be part 3, we're going to talk about computational antitrust in Brazil, try to take a step back, forecast the future, and see where everything is going forward. But for now, to come back to the strategic vision of the agency and your vision, maybe also more specifically, your agency has been contributing to our annual report 3 times, which I think, I haven't double checked, but I think is the most any agency has ever contributed to. So thank you so very much for that. And for that reason, I'm also confident you're going to have something to answer to this question, which is to give us the first overview as to where CADE is deploying computational antitrust. Where do you stand? Where you've been the most active? And you've been at the agency for quite some time, so you've seen changes. So give us, please, a flavor of everything you've seen in the space.
Thanks so much. It's a great pleasure to be here and be speaking about CADE and antitrust, and of course, all the developments that we're having technology in the last years. Well, Schrepel is a long time project. Right now, it started in 2014, if I'm not wrong. So it's over 10 years at this point. But we have a different endeavors going on right now. We're in the middle of what we call a digital transformation. We're actually trying to get from a traditional agency and going into a more digital agency. And the way we work, CADE is already a paperless agency, meaning you don't need to move any paper around in any of our procedures. Of course, we still can print out something, but you don't need to have any type of physical process to work on. And so it's going on for a while, and we are moving at different services into more sophisticated digital platforms. One of the things we have put a lot of investment right now is security. So of course, if you're completely paperless, you need backups, you need firewalls, you need protection. People used to ask me if we have cyber attacks. It's just a matter of how many a day. Every day we have cyber attacks here, but not successful. So that's a good part of it. We have a new app. This is something new for us. Never had an app. So right now you can check all the decisions from CADE online. You can see everything that's going in our official gazette. You can check the app, you can check the news and stuff like that. It's quite obvious, but a lot of agencies do not do it. Sessions, all our sessions are online. They are available on YouTube, so you can watch it online. You can watch it later.
Nice.
So it's completely open. Other thing we try to do is get our decisions very fast out there. So the moment we decide to the moment that the final opinion is completely written and reviewed, it's 1 week. This is the deadline we work. So whatever we're deciding this week, the next week you're going to have the full decision is going to be completely reviewed. Sometimes agency issue the decision, but you do not have the full reasoning, and we do have that now. We have, well, I was forgetting one of the big ones, which is e-Notifica, which is basically a digital notification system. So basically what it does is you have a completely automatic process of notification, a merger or an M&A. And as long as the process is what we call a fast track, the system can check if that's a fast track, and then it's going to have an automatic decision. This is already happening right now. So automatic decision is always reviewed by a human, but it's already done inside the system. So I could say that between the moment you fill the form and the moment we have this first automatic decision, a matter of hours, but then someone's going to come in, is going to review the decision, is going to review the documents. If it qualifies for fast track, that's it. It's going to be approved usually under 15 days. If it goes over 30 days, the tribunal needs to justify that. So we have recently one case that happened where it was a fast track and took over 30 days. All the other fast track is under 30 days, and it's very easy. You just need to fill the information. We have a lot of information by the companies in our database. We can basically check the database and see, look, we don't need any documentation because we know the concentration is going to be low here. We already know who the big companies are in this market. We do not need anything else. If our team believes there is some type of complexity, so then it moves out from the fast track. It's going to the ordinary system, which the timeline is going to be 240 days. This is the legal limit. We can extend that for extra 90, but I must say most of them is going to be solved in under 90 days. This is where we are right now. On average, we are something like 25 days on average. Most of the cases are going to be solved under 90 days. Very few is going to be over 90 days. And I would say 1 or 2 every year we are going to actually have the 90 extra days of the stand period. And that's just for the most complex operations. It's not going to be the day-to-day information. What we're trying to move right now, but we have done a lot in merger and acquisitions in concentration area. We're trying to move forward into the investigation phase. One of our big challenges right now to make the investigation faster is the serving process. And of course, Schrepel is one of the big ones. I'm quite sure we're going to go back to
We're going to
this.
talk about it. Yeah. But so that's why we were so happy to talk with you, because the agency is always coming up with fresh new ideas, streaming of procedures, an app, automating decision making. Those are not the things that we typically see around the world.
So building on the digital transformation and also the developments that we have seen with computational antitrust, I wanted to maybe propose a little game in the sense of maybe you can give us a cliffhanger for later, for when we discuss computational antitrust, because I was thinking about this intersection between bureaucracy, quickness, security, and you integrating this technology into your enforcement. So I was wondering whether you could maybe in a 2-sentence narrative present what perception you have with regards to computational antitrust, whether you think that it's a productivity tool that investigators should use for their enforcement in the background, or whether you think that it's going to really transform how competition policy is done.
Well, the true sentence to that is yes, it's going to transform completely, but that's not just antitrust. And I can give you the longer version for that. All right. So we need to understand that 2025, the investment into AI, it was around the ballpark of $300 billion. We're not talking about million, we're talking about $1 billion. And in the years to come, it's going to get $1 trillion. The whole Apollo program, 10 years of development and going to the moon, was $200 billion. We are talking about projects that are spending more than that a year. I would say the economy is going to be completely different. Agencies that do not understand that they're going to be completely different in 5, 10 years, they're going to probably lose this jump because we're going to face a new jump. So in a matter of speaking, yes, it's going to be a productivity tool that is going to help us. You're right. But so much is going to change. If you look like what we changed in antitrust from the 50s to the 80s or the 70s and the 80s, right? So one of the accusations that we were going to have the classical antitrust analysis that was being done in Harvard and stuff like that during the 50s of the last century, it was too simple. That's one of the major accusations. Oh, they're simplifying a lot. And of course, they were simplifying a lot. They didn't have the data. They didn't have the the computing capability to analyze complex information. When you go to the 70s, in the 80s, now you have computers, you have all the telecommunications, all the databases, and now all the analysis became more complex. You start doing more complex tests. Well, you could argue maybe it was too complex by the time. This is one of the critics. That being said, I don't think anybody today would seriously believe that you should not get information that you start getting in the 70s, the 80s. Of course, when you have more information, have more computing capability, your tests are going to be more sophisticated. It changed the way we analyze the theories of harms. A lot of theories of harms that we thought were bad with further computing, further information, more data. Now we think, well, that's not so easy. You need to do further testing because it actually could be more efficient. And this is the discussion that we have from the 50s to the 80s. Of course, a lot of that was economical theory, but a lot of that was just using computers and using more information into antitrust. So it's going to be very naive to think that you're going to have all this information coming from machine learning, AI, generative AI, very complex data banks doing very complex analysis, and we're still going to think the same way that we do today. I'm quite sure we're going to see new tests. I'm quite sure we're going to see new theories of harm. Maybe we're going to challenge some of the assumptions that we have today. I don't believe it fundamentally we're going to change antitrust agencies, meaning at the end of the day, it's going to be a procedure. It's going to be a legal and economical discussion. You're going to still be debating over evidence and over economical tests. But I believe the way that we analyze cases is going to change a lot, really, really, really dramatically, if you think about 10 years at least.
So within all of this background, one of the most fascinating initiative at CADE is the, I say it in Spanish, Cerebro project, which uses procurement data to detect cartels. So maybe could you explain and guide us through the evolution of the project? So what problems it was designed to solve in the past, have those evolved over time, and whether they are really replacing traditional investigative methods or complementing them?
Perfect. Well, first of all, cerebro is just mean brains in English, all right? So
no,
and
in Spanish it's the same.
Yeah, that's the same word. But basically, this is we're talking about a technology of 10 years ago. Basically, and just to be completely honest, AI principles, they have 20 years. So the principles are well known for some time, need more computing. We're having more computing capability right now. But the principles of Cerebro were built in what we call machine learning. It's not actually a generative AI the way we know it today, but that's more like machine learning. So what it does is it can access a large amount of data. And this is one of the things we actually got quite good, is accumulating data from different operations. We actually buy part of that. We get data from universities and other federal agencies that provide this data for us. And of course, we accumulate this data from every case in every merger and acquisition operation that we get. It all goes into Cerebral. So at this point, it's a 10 years project. We have a very large database. It's so large that depending on the query, we need to do that outside of our servers. Otherwise, it can just crash our system. So depending on the way we do it, we need to program to do it in the downtime, during the weekend. The database is really complex and large. But what Cerebral can do, it can analyze this data. So this is what is quite good. He can analyze the data and find patterns. It's not like Cerebral is going to solve any cases, but he can point investigators where to look at. So I can give you a quite good example, like public procurement. So you're buying something, and then you have different bidding, different competitors. The way we would traditionally do that is that you would look one single purchase and try to see if there is some wrongdoing, and sometimes it's quite difficult. What Cerebral can do, it can actually look at hundreds of purchases and see, is there a pattern? Like every time, is this guy winning and that guy losing? Every time this is the competitors and the second bidding is like that. Of course, I'm trying to oversimplify, but he can find patterns, say, look, this is not the way the market usually works, but this set of purchase, there's something different to them. You should look at it with more detail. And he can actually point what the red flags are. And then the investigation team is going to go into effect. One of the examples I can give you, it's a case that was already ruled. It was regarding hospital purchase. And we had 4 different companies that were doing different bidding, different hospitals for different equipment. If you look every single one of them, you don't see a problem. But because we have a very large database, we could actually see all of their purchase during the year, every single procurement that they took part. And we noticed that every single one of them, was 4 companies, were winning 25%. Very, very exactly in precise numbers. The only way you can figure that out if you have the information of everything they are buying. And of course, it was not random. It was very precise information. We could see this is going to be a repetition of behavior. Like each one would win something, but at the end, they try to every time share the market in four parts. And we're talking about different purchase, different equipment. So it's very difficult to locate that if you're looking into a case by case. The problem that we have is how we can translate that into evidence, because every single lawyer is going to tell you this is circumstantial. Like you cannot convict someone just on that ground. A lawyer is going to say, oh, that's just a random result. If you look into hundreds of markets and hundreds of suspicious companies, at some point you're going to find that type of evidence. You're building a case from the end and not trying to get evidence from a case that you already have. So we're building the case on a random statistic. So this is the problem here. And of course, they would be right. There is a scenario, like it's very known by mathematicians. Like you get someone and say, look, this is a blue car and there was a blonde woman, and you give some statistics, and maybe you're going to say, oh, there's a 1 in a million chance that's going to be this one. But of course, if you're doing that with reverse engineering, probably. And the 1 in a million is probably not going to be 1 in a million, because you do not know the whole universe, and you could be providing evidence against the wrong person. So it's very difficult to do that based on statistics. But what you can do, the moment you have this information, then you start to get the traditional ways of investigation. So this is the point you're going to ask for a seizure of the cell phones to break the communications, check emails, check servers, maybe organizing a down rate. And I would say what Cerebral gives us is a very good way of convincing a judge to authorize, for example, a down rate into different companies. And at this point, you could produce more conclusive evidence. So this is the way we're working right now. The first cases that were Cerebral always helped us analyzing data for a long time, but now we're bringing up the first cases that started with Cerebral. So these are cases that we had no idea what was going on. we decided to do a run in one specific market. We got a lot of red flags, and then the investigation started. So now we have this type of cases that we didn't have any clues before. It started with Cerebro, but we were able to produce evidence and build on that. Meaning, the ethics of using machine learning for investigation, the type of limits that we need. But I believe so far we are able to produce good cases that are standing in the judiciary system.
And also, a recent example where data analytics really played a role was the Novo Rumo operation,
Yes.
which targeted a large infrastructure cartel. So what would you say that that particular case taught CADE about the potential of computational tools in being applied in real investigations?
I think Novo Rumo was a game changer. We learn a lot of what this type of technology can do and what it can't do. And it is a very interesting case. What I believe that the tribunal need to reflect is what we call indirect evidence, the distinction of direct evidence. So usually when you're talking about cartels, what you want to the type of evidence you want to have at the end of the day is the actual collusion. So you want to have an email, something like that, that says, look, let's rig this bidding. Let's fix this price. This is what you want as a member of tribunal. Well, you're not going to have that in every single case, especially because companies and perpetrators get more sophisticated. This is not the way they're going to do. They're not going to keep communications every single time. A lot of time we receive that type of defense like, oh, but they were not talking about that for 6 months before the purchase. So look, yes, because it was already fixed 1 year before. They didn't need to check every single month. So the moment you already have a collusion like that going on, you're probably going to restrict communications. You do not want to be talking about that every single time. But at the end of the day, what you want is what we call direct evidence. And cases like Novo Rumo started to single out the importance of what we call indirect evidence, meaning sometimes you can actually prove a collusion with different means that are not just proving that the different competitors actually got in touch with each other and actually have done that. But of course, even when we use economical evidence or indirect evidence, we still want to do the due investigation and at least have evidence that they got in touch with each other. So usually the cartel cases that we have, we try to at least demonstrate that they had meetings together, that they had dinners together. A lot of times you can actually produce this type of evidence, like this day, these guys were at this city and sometimes not in Brazil. They were all together in the city. They had dinner at this specific restaurant, and then we can see what happened later. So sometimes we don't know what was actually discussed in this specific dinner. Unless you are a very sophisticated intelligence agency, it's very difficult to cover everything, especially if you're not looking into this case at that moment of time. Usually that's how it happens. You just start to paying attention when the cartel is already in place. It's very difficult to anticipate that the cartel is going to be set up. But when you have that type of hard evidence, I would say, of contact, and then you can demonstrate the change of behaviors before and later, that's very good evidence. And the tribunal learned a lot of using indirect evidence and using the collaboration of people that's under leniency programs, stuff like that. One of the lessons that we had to learn is the hard way, I must say, is not put your whole case over the leniency program. So a lot of our old cases, it was something like that. You had one company that would come forward and say, look, you caught us, this is it, we're going to help. And then investigators would treat every single declaration that was done by this company as the complete truth of it. And sometimes it was actually like a cycle where the investigations feedback to the executives what they suspect, and the executives wanted to have a very good deal. People say they would pay no fines. Otherwise, they could go to jail. They were already invested in the case because they already presented themselves as guilty. So they started feeding the investigators the same thing they were being fed back. That's a lesson. It was not specific by CADE. Actually, this is something that was a lesson that our judiciary system need to learn and our law enforcement agencies need to learn, because Brazil didn't have a very long tradition in leniency programs. CADE is probably one of the oldest agencies to do that. But right now, this is one of the lessons we learn. Okay, we're going to have full cooperation, but every single information that's provided by someone that has some type of incentive is not evidence. It's not treated by evidence. It always needs to be confirmed by independent source of information. It could be independent person. It could be a document, something else. It could be economical indirect evidence, but it needs to be confirmed with someone else. You cannot get whatever were provided by you by leniency program and just use that as evidence. This is something like we had that like Excel sheets. It's very difficult well, Excel sheets can have very good information because sometimes you can see how it was fixed. You could see how it was shared, but it's very difficult to actually tell that's evidence because someone at the end of the day just filled the sheet and the sheet is as good as his word because he could have created that from his mind. What economical evidence in this this type of data analysis can provide us is then look at the data, say, look, this data sheet is actually confirmed by all the data that we have actually, and there's no way it could happen this way unless it was fixed because this data sheet was manufactured this specific data, and then we could see what happened later, and what happened later is very much the same thing that was planned in the data sheet, and then you can demonstrate beyond reasonable doubt because that's always something that the behavior pretty much corresponded to what was in agreement.
Gustavo, let me ask a question on that. So, building on this experience and what you've learned, right? So, the fact that maybe you cannot just rely on data analytics or just on leniency programs. In the context of computational antitrust, do you see that CADE is playing a role in helping other agencies in the region developing the tools where maybe you would share that experience? Are you also cooperating with other agencies in the region in trying to learn from what they've learned? Which are your partnered agencies, the one you are the closest to?
Well, CADE, I believe, has a very good and strong role in Latin America. We do cooperate with OECD a lot. There is a learning center in Peru that is organized by OECD. We always send people over there. I myself was over there last year doing small training. We do have a lot of meetings inside Mercosur with Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, which are agencies that work very closely with us. At some point with Bolivia and Colombia as well. Of course, we receive representatives from different agencies here, but I believe that the role that we have is not only Cerebral, because CADE is a large agency. We are by ourselves a large country. So, of course, we're going to have more cases. I would like to say that CADE is the largest agency in the region. Actually, in the copy in Peru, if you look the raw numbers, they are larger, but they have another roles that are not antitrust. If you look just the antitrust section, we are larger, but in the copy is a very powerful and broad-scoped agency over that. But we try to work together with every single one. We had a very good learning into the last 10 years from specifically bid rigging. So I would like to say we're experts on that type of cases. And we are always help to provide evidence, share specifically training and know-how to these agencies. But sometimes you need to understand the culture of every judiciary system. You have judiciary systems that are less sophisticated. Some type of discussions are not on the table or have different traditions. Different jurisdictions treat leniency programs very differently. So you still need to respect all that and understand that every country is inside one specific environment.
Yeah. So still in the context of cooperation and taking a step back, I will give the floor to Alba and to see how from that Cerebral project, maybe CADE has evolved into a computational agency and an agency that is leading the way.
So precisely because of this differences in culture and jurisdictions, also languages. So for instance, we know about examples, for instance, in Lithuania, which trained NLP tools in over 100 languages. France put every single decision since 1988 on Hugging Face, and CADE operates in Portuguese, which also limits the off-the-shelf options for integrating the project into its enforcement. So has CADE really built its own Portuguese language NLP capacity? Or is there, and this is like a quite interested question for us, is there a case, a use case for a Latin American shared dataset? So for instance, involving procurement records, pricing data, case decisions that multiple agencies could train on together. So if there's a chance to do that, we'd love to work on that.
That's a very interesting question. I will divide that into two fronts. First of all, the language barrier. Honestly, I don't believe that's a problem because LLMs are training all over the languages. Maybe if you have very specific language, it could be a problem. But if you're talking about the most known languages, they translate very well into each other. Just go to ChatGPT. You can keep the same conversation in different languages. I'm not sure if you already tried to do that. Usually Europeans, they are able to speak something like 4 different languages. You can continue the same conversation to ChatGPT in different languages. It's going to keep the whole subject together. So I don't think LLMs have this type of difficulty. But of course, when you get in more technical conversation, yes, because sometimes type of terms could be different from different regions, from different jurisdictions. The way, like per se, or you analyze by effect, it could play a role here. So this takes us to the second part of our discussion is that yes, we are actually working on a new AI. As I was mentioned before, Cerebro is not a generative AI. It's a very good database and with very good machine learning and analytics capabilities, but that's not AI. Sometimes it gets confused together, but in technical terms, at least the experts say that it's not AI, it's not generative AI yet. So what we're trying to launch, it's already in our strategical planning. We already reserved some initial resources to that, budgetary resources. And I would love to see that being launched before the end of my term. My term ends in 1 month. At this point, I would like to announce that before that, is that we're going to start officially speaking, because of course we're already working on that, a new AI. So in this, well, you already have all the information to build the AI in open source. That's not actually that complicated. If you cut out some stuff, meaning if you cut out images, if you cut out video, if you cut out audio, you're just working on text, which is basically what we would need right now. At this point, we don't want an AI with imagery capabilities, which makes it much more complicated. But it's just working about text. You can do that with basically a cheaply way, I would say, probably a few $1 million.
Yeah, I was about to ask, so how costly is that?
I would say current technology is something like $4 or $5 million. You could start your project with $1 million probably.
But so that's the budget you had. You will reach that. Yeah.
We just spent $5 million in digital transformation. We just secured that. Part of that's going to be used to initiate the process. So we're probably going to need to secure a few more to complete everything. But it's going to be multiple years. So budgetary, usually you negotiate year by year. I do believe we do have very good support to a project like that. Especially we were talking about different agencies. We already have a budget that we could just, I'll try to be more specific here. We were already able to deal with some expenses we had to the next 5 years or so. Some of that was already taken care of. So we're probably going to move money around and put into this specific project. So basically what we're going to have is an open source generative AI, but that's going to run into our servers. And it's going to be trained only in CADE's information and not going to have any communication with the internet or online or stuff like that. And the main reason for that is because a lot of our decisions have restricted information. If you get this restricted information and put that in ChatGPT, for instance, it's going to learn on restricted information. Then someone else is going to ask, well, what's the participation of this specific company? It's going to say, oh yeah, we do have a document here from CADE that says the participation is going to be this, and that. So you cannot feed that in ChatGPT or anything like that, because they work on learning and nobody can actually say what they're going to learn. It's a completely black box on that. Nobody can assure you. At the moment that they receive information, it's impossible to assure if they're going to learn or not on that. So we are going to feed it completely separated. It's going to be something that's going to run in the independent server. So it's not going to communicate with internet. We are not talking about agentic AI yet. It's basically going to be used to give a more sophisticated tool of analysis. And we want to, at some point, integrate that with Cerebral. So now we would have this large data bank that could communicate with generative AI. And generative AI can do one thing very good. It can get creative. Sometimes it's bad because they hallucinate to start inventing things, but they are creative. So machine learning are more mathematical. They are more precise. So, but they do not create new ways of approaching. So this is something that we want to do it in the future. I would say this is where we're going to be in 5 years. It's not something that we're going to be at the end of the year, but this is something that I would like to see in 5 years. We have our own AI running, integrated with Cerebral, and maybe helping to give the opinions from commission, stuff like that.
Yeah, my bet is that it will be even before that, because agentic AI is not far away. Once you have trained the system, it's kind of easy nowadays to just say, every time I'm going to add new information to this folder, just retrain and add it to the training, and then you could consider it to be agentic AI. Let me ask 2 follow-up questions, quick ones.
Sure.
To see how the agency position itself when it comes to AI. So the first one is regarding the government. How easy is it for you to negotiate budget increase if you need one, right? If you say, I'm going to use it to use in Gen AI, agentic AI. And the second one relates to universities and the students. I suppose that you would need to acquire that expertise. And so are you just hoping that university will do the job and will send good candidates? Or are you trying to maybe, nudge them towards creating kind of a training that would be helpful down the line?
Perfect. Well, right now the relationship between CADE and government is quite good because CADE is actually a small agency. It's not very expensive, and usually we have a surplus. So when you consider all the fines that we issue, every fine that we issue does not go into CADE. So basically we have a fee. Every time you file a merger operation in CADE, you pay a fee. This fee covers our costs, everything. CADE does not need any budget. It just relies on its fee. And that's not the fines. So it's completely separate. So we only receive the fees for the notification process. We do not have received the fines. Of course, there is a reason for that. We do not want to give the economical incentive. So we issue higher fines just because we need more budget. So that's why it's separated. But the money from these fines into a fund, a trust. This trust actually pays for a lot of different projects. So it's not administered by CADE, it's administered by the Justice Department, and there is a full board with the society and members of the public attorney. That's different representatives, and then decide on the projects. And this goes a lot for social projects. We have a social project going on that we're going to announce very closely. But the thing is, this trust actually was able to put some money in projects like that. And we do believe we have a very good relationship with the trust, that we're going to receive the necessary money from this specific trust. And this trust is actually invests in technology, in scientific development. So this is something that we can work on. We already have some projects that were already approved. We do not have secured everything to the end, but I believe it's not going to be a hard time. Regarding university, actually CADE has a very good program that deals with that. We call it Team CADE. So every year, I just done that. We get a lot of different students for different universities 1 month here in CADE. So this is the way we develop a lot of relationships, because these are people that usually they come from economics and law. They are trained here for 1 week. They go to day here. They watch a lot of lectures, and they really get motivated to work later. So we had a very good case where we can get the best from this group and then employ in the agency later on. The thing is, and this get what you're talking about, I don't think we're actually doing that in technological sector. So this is something that there was some red flags opening up, meaning, well, okay, we're getting very good lawyers, we're getting very good people from economics background, but we're not getting specialized big tech IT nerds. This is not something that we're doing. And this is something that's going to be very problematic. The main reason is because everybody wants this type of experts right now.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be very easy to get them. But I do believe at some point we need to, and points probably now, we're going to need to get more experts. We do have an IT section. Part of that is it's higher on the markets, not higher by the traditional way we hire employees. But we probably need to get more way of attracting technological people, technological resources into our agencies. This is something that we're already thinking of. We already have a data scientist group. This is something that we already have. It's a partnership with one of our universities. We already have a group working here. Actually, we are able to require people from the university to work in CADE. The law already gives that power, and most of universities are very cooperative. So we already have a data scientist group. Probably we're going to reinforce that with different capabilities in technological work.
And so building also on the applications of these technology, not only on finding these patterns that you talked about or translating it to evidence, or also pointing the finger towards problematic situations where judges have to really authorize your entry to a dawn rate. I was also wondering, and bearing in mind that mergers do finance nearly all CADE, maybe there's a use case for expanding their application to post-merger surveillance, so some kind of real-time market monitoring where you can really flesh out or explore the options of mergers evolving in the market through the application of these tools, and not having like the one person looking with a magnifying glass over a market.
Yes, this is certainly a use case for that. You can analyze and monitor every single market if you want. The problem is it's going to demand incredible resources for that. We are in an era of actually an explosion of data. You have more data than you can actually analyze. So yes, you could monitor, but you need to prioritize. So what we do is our economic studies department, and the name of this department is getting every time trickier and trickier, because our economic studies department is doing much more than just economic studies at this point. And I would like to say, but the name is in the law, so it's not, you cannot change that. But they are getting more sophisticated into the data analysis every single time. So part of our experts, we have a lot of PhD in economics, but we have a lot of experts in data analysis as well. So a lot of the efforts that we do with the DEE, with the Department of Economic Studies. So we need to prioritize sectors. Every time we change, we try to schedule, we try to select different sectors to be studied. We just issue, well, our priority in the last that we issued last year, and we are getting some fruits right now, was the oil industry, especially the gasoline and fuel sales and gas station stuff like that. We just issued a very complex study right now. And I believe it was one of the most complex studies that we have issued, because usually when you look the concentration of gas stations, we just could make very good evidence that they are deceiving. Think you have less concentration that you actually have. And the way it was demonstrated, it was analyzing at the town level. We have like 5,000 cities in Brazil. It was analyzed town by town. And we tried to look connections between gas stations, like relatives, people that are brothers, but you would look there in under different flags, but they are partners in different companies, or they are relatives. And we were able to track that the concentration in the sector is over 60%. This is a number that we didn't have before. And it was completely done by getting this information linked together. Of course, we have a lot of help from the Petroleum National Authority that have provided information on that. Yes, these are typical use cases you can do. You can get mergers, and then you can look into the market and see, look, maybe you're going to have conduct, but it could go the other way around. So you could have conduct, and what you have in these investigations could help you deciding whether you're going to approve or not a merger. So yes, but it's impossible to use every single case used. You need to have strategy. You need to pick your battles.
Okay, let me ask a very final question. And this will be taking more than a step back, a couple steps back. If we were having this conversation 5 years from now, what would success look like for computational antitrust in Brazil? You've mentioned already something that will happen in 5 years, so you cannot reuse that one. I will make it a bit more.
Well, I would like to see, first of all, the completely move into the digital market. Regulation, it needs to be solved one way or another. I do believe, and I've been talking about that a few times right now, that some type of regulation in the digital market is going to be enforced no matter what. And just because the sector is so under-regulated when you compare it to everything else. Like if you compare the digital market with telecommunications, with health insurance, with flight services, with bank services, every single of these sectors is much more regulated than digital market. And we know the digital market is getting much more important in every single aspect. People use, I will talk about Brazil's case, people use WhatsApp communication much more than they would use traditional cell phones lines. And cell phones are completely regulated, WhatsApp is not. So we need to have a solution to that. Completely against over-regulation of the sector. I believe we're in the middle of a very large technological race. So that's not the moment you want to prevent innovation. Innovation is going to come. We do not want to increase any regulatory costs to that, but we need to have some establishment of rules for the sector. And I believe we are in a point that's inevitable, especially when we're talking about AI. You need to have some rules. We are seeing a lot of discussions that I would not assume would be so quick, but I assume it was coming, because the moment we started seeing the development of AI, I already said it, already called it, military applications inevitable. There's no way AI is not going to be used into military applications. We just watched that 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, if I'm not wrong, with Iran and the discussion with Anthropic. If AI could have the full decision cycle of a military action, we already know AI is going to be used in the battlefield. But the question is, does it need human supervision or not? So stuff like that is inevitable to be regulated, because at some point you're going to have rules. I'm not saying that we are going to regulate how it's going to be used in battlefield, because that's very difficult for agents to do. But of course, you can imagine it's going to have different applications. I would like to see at this point as a completely digital agency, meaning we need to be able to regulate and understand economics inside the digital markets, inside the digital realms. First of all, understanding how the economics work on this environment. And second of all, we need to act like that. We cannot have a 20th century agency investigating 21st century cases. That's not how you do it. So we need to have some type of, be prepared to working into more sophisticated cases. And I would like to see that in 5 years, this would be a success. I believe the best scenario would have no cartel cases in 5 years. I don't think it's possible. The second best would be to have this.
There is one way to have no cases. You stop enforcing the law, right? And you just pretend the problem is solved, which of course is not the solution. But
this is not the way I would like.
No, but I would also argue that CADE already is not a competition agency from the 20th century, right? I mean, the technique you deploy is already something of the 21st century very much. In that regard, I mean, I think it speaks volume as to...
But the thing is, the 20th century is just beginning. That's the thing. So you cannot accommodate just to be where you are. You need to jump ahead. This is going to be a game changer for everyone, and you need to be able to do difficult changes.
Yeah, maybe to have real-time evolution, right? That matches the time of technology. On that, I think it's a good place for us to stop the conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing so many insights. We're going to try to put as many references in the show notes as possible for people to get access to the reports and everything you've been doing. So very nice seeing you, and I'll see you in person very soon. So I wish you a good day.
You're correct.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure. And I know it was a long conversation, but I really had a very good experience. It was quite fun. And I hope we have some very good insights from here.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.